Hello and welcome, everyone. My name is Emily. I'm one of the health coaches with our lifestyle medicine team, and I'll be your moderator for today's plant powered challenge session. We're so happy to have you join us as we continue to explore ways to nourish our bodies and optimize our health. Today, our session is titled Nature is Medicine, and we're thrilled to have Dr. Sundermann with us. So, I'm just going to tell you a little bit about her. So, Dr. Melissa Sundermann is a double board certified physician in internal medicine and lifestyle medicine with over 25 years of experience in medical practice. She has advanced training in integrative medicine from the University of Michigan and has completed a professional training program in mind body medicine through the Center for Mind Body Medicine. Dr. Sundermann believes in holistic, patient centered approach, empowering individuals to heal through self care and the pillars of lifestyle medicine. Widely recognized as Dr. Outdoors, she's a leading expert in nature as medicine and serves as the founding chair of the Nature as Medicine subcommittee for the American College of Lifestyle Medicine. She's also the chair for the Global Wellness Institute's Lifestyle Medicine Initiative, where she works to expand global awareness of evidence based lifestyle interventions. Currently, Dr. Sundermann is the medical director of lifestyle medicine for Corewell Health System and leads her expertise to many different organizations in efforts to expand lifestyle medicine both nationally and globally. Her debut book, Dr. Outdoors' Guide to Nature and Lifestyle Medicine, was released this past fall and offers readers a transformative blend of science, stories, and strategies to reclaim health through the healing power of the natural world. A lifelong outdoor enthusiast, Dr. Sundermann finds inspiration and healing in running, biking, hiking, skiing, and immersing herself in nature. She's a 12-time Boston Marathon finisher, a 3-time full Ironman triathlon finisher, and is currently training for upcoming ultramarathons. She firmly believes that age is not your cage and is dedicated to helping others cultivate vitality, resilience, and joy at every stage of life. So, with that, I'll hand it over to Dr. Sundermann to go ahead and get started.
Thank you so much, Emily, for that wonderful introduction and welcome everyone. Plant Powered Challenge. I'm so excited that you're all here. So we're going to be learning about nature as medicine. So I'm just going to share my screen here. And hopefully everyone can see that. Great. So the topic that we'll be talking about is nature is nurture, the therapeutic power of the great outdoors. So the objectives today is we're going to demonstrate the potential benefits of nature exposure. We're going to share evidence supporting the role of nature and health, and we're going to provide tools to help engage individuals to achieve more time spent outdoors. So, lifestyle medicine, you're going to be hearing a lot about this. And we have 6 official pillars of lifestyle medicine through the American College of Lifestyle Medicine, and they are all equally important. So, we have nutrition, and we do advocate for a plant strong dietary pattern. Food is medicine. Next pillar is sleep. Sleep is truly our superpower. So, really trying to get at least 7 hours of restorative sleep every night. Exercise, or as I like to term it, movement, to moving our bodies on a consistent and regular basis. Substance abuse, avoiding risky behaviors and risky substances that do not serve us. Next pillar, stress management. We all have stress in our life. However, there are tools that we can utilize to best handle our stress. And then finally, the 6th official pillar is the role of connection. So obviously connection with ourselves, with others. I also believe in the environment. However, I do advocate for an unofficial 7th pillar of lifestyle medicine. Now, as Emily said, I'm known as Dr. Outdoors. You may see that my medical degree is a DO, so that works very well. But Hippocrates, the father of medicine, was also a Dr. Outdoors. And one of his quotes, "The physician treats, but nature heals." And so my unofficial 7th pillar of lifestyle medicine is daily exposure to nature and fresh air. So this is me, Dr. Outdoors, Nature as Medicine. And as Emily mentioned, I am the founding chair of the American College of Lifestyle Medicine Nature as Medicine Committee. And these are some of the amazing speakers that we've had. We've had speakers from all over the world. It is a lot of fun. And why is this important? Well, the EPA did a study several years ago asking Americans, how much time do you spend outdoors? Well, about 87% of time is spent inside buildings. So workplaces, schools, homes, stores, about 6% of time is spent inside automobiles or public transportation. So this implies that the average American only spends about 7% of their time outdoors. So as Dr. Outdoors, this is one of my favorite prescriptions to prescribe to my patients. I also love this. So green spaces and blue spaces as my therapeutic intervention. So why is this my favorite prescription? Well, first of all, cost. When we look at pharmaceuticals, and believe me, as an internist spanning almost 30 years, I have prescribed lots of medications. And sometimes my patients are not compliant with medication. And it's not because they don't want to take the medication, it's because the cost can be exorbitant. Even if you have a copay, it can be very expensive. Now, my nature pill, my nature medication can be very cost affordable. A lot of times you can just step out your door for free. Sometimes there might be a small park admission if you're going to a national park or maybe a state park, but overall, the cost is very affordable and accessible. Next, side effects. Anytime you've maybe been on a medication or you've heard an advertisement, you hear about all of the side effects, and there are oftentimes a lot, and most of them are negative side effects, adverse side effects. Well, fortunately, my nature prescription majority is going to be positive side effects, and we'll get into what those are. Now, you do have to be careful if you're gardening not to get poison ivy, or if you live maybe on the East Coast, not getting bit by a tick. But overall, the majority of side effects are going to be positive. And next, duration. When I prescribe medications, a lot of times my patients have to take the medication every day, sometimes twice a day, sometimes even 3 times a day. That's because the duration has a short half-life, meaning it doesn't last very long. Some medications, maybe you take once a month, rarely, maybe every 6 months for some injectables, but overall, a short half-life. I will be sharing some studies that show that nature exposure, nature prescription actually has a very long half-life. In fact, stepping outdoors today could have positive effects lasting up to a month. We'll get into that in a little bit. So where did this all begin? Shinrin Yoku. So Shinrin Yoku is a Japanese practice that promotes visiting the forest for relaxation and to improve one's health. And it literally means forest bathing. And this all originated in the early 1980s in Japan, where the National Health Program in Japan was proposed for forest bathing by the Forest Agency of Japan. And actually, the main idea was to reduce stress in workers. So, workplace wellness. We hear about that a lot nowadays. And so, it was started off as a $1.5 million project. And one of the key members was Dr. King Lee. And Dr. King Lee is today still one of the most prolific researchers about nature as medicine. So it looks like this is maybe a little bit hard to read. Sorry about that. But this is looking at the relationship between Shinrin Yoku and immune function. And this is what Dr. King Lee was very, very interested in. And they had already known that the immune system, including natural killer cells, plays a vital role in the defense against bacteria, viruses, and tumors, aka cancer. And it was already shown that stress can inhibit immune function. And think about this. If you've had maybe a really stressful time, a lot going on at work or in the home life, and you haven't been getting much sleep, what happens? You tend to get a cold or you might get sick. That's because stress inhibits our immune function. So Dr. King Lee posed the question, could forest environments, Shinrin Yoku, reduce stress and thereby perhaps if it reduced stress, it could actually help boost our immune system. So this is just a slide that shows what happens with natural killer cell activity in relationship to incident rate of cancer. And individuals who have lower natural killer cell activity, lower immune function, tend to have a higher incident rates of cancer, whereas people with higher natural killer cell activity tend to have a lower incident rates of cancer. And that's both in males and females. So one of the first Shinrin-yoku forest bathing studies was done in 2005, and then the work was published in 2007. And what it involved was taking subjects to the forest for 2 days. They measured their natural killer cell activity. And what do they find? Well, you can see the baseline in blue, that's before. And then you can see at day 1 and day 2, there was an elevation in this natural killer cell activity. Something was going on with the immune system. So they said, well, maybe this is just that they got to leave home. They didn't have to do homework. They didn't have to do chores with their kids, and they just got away. So they took these same individuals and they brought them to an urban environment. And they did the same thing where they measured natural killer cell activity before day 1, day 2, and this time they did not see that increase. So something truly was going on with the forest environment. And this is where we talk about that long half-life. So you can see it baseline in blue, natural killer cell activity. Then we see day 1, day 2, when they're in the forest environments, we saw that increase. And then they went back home. And 1 week out and 1 month out, we still saw an increase from baseline of natural killer cell activity. So a very long half-life, a long effect of this immune boost. So they figured they were onto something. So they decided, let's do a bigger study. And this was a larger study that involved 280 subjects total. And they went to different forest environments in Japan. And it was a crossover. So on the first day, 6 subjects went to the forest environment and 6 subjects spent time in an urban environment. They sat for 15 minutes and then they just gently walked for 15 minutes. And on the second day, urban went to forest, forest went to urban. And this time, instead of measuring natural killer cell activity immune system, they measured salivary cortisol, which is a stress hormone, blood pressure, and pulse rate. And what did they find? Well, looking at changes in salivary cortisol, we can see that in the black, being in the forest environment, they had lower levels of stress hormone, both viewing and walking. What about pulse rate? Similar trend, just being in that forest environment lowered the pulse rate, getting into more of a relaxation, more of a parasympathetic, both viewing and walking. And what about blood pressure? The top bars are going to be systolic blood pressure, and the bottom are going to be diastolic. And again, we see this trend where we're getting into more of this relaxation state. So something truly is happening in forest environments. So the question is, how long do you have to be out here? Now, as Dr. Outdoors, I would love to live in a yurt or a teepee, but there's things like home life, jobs. So what is that nature dose? We always talk about dosing when we're looking at therapeutic interventions. And this was a study that came out of the University of Michigan looking at nature dose. And what they did was they looked at diurnal salivary cortisol and looked for the biggest percent drop. We know that cortisol goes up and down and up and down throughout the course of the day. But where do we see the biggest drop? And they split this into quartiles. So if you look at that red arrow, that seems to be the biggest, largest percent cortisol drop beyond that diurnal effect. And that is about 21 to 30 minutes. I follow the literature closely, and it seems to be agreed upon that the nature dose is to try to get outdoors for at least 20 minutes every day. And this is another study looking at that same thing and what it found. And this was asking people to survey their how they felt over the last 7 days. And what they found was that people who spent time outdoors at least 120 minutes per week had higher self-reported well-being scores. And you can see that that kind of plateaus. So there is that sweet spot, about 100, at least 120, maybe up to 240. Now this breaks down to 20 or 30 minutes per day. And I say, just like when we talk about getting movement, that you can break that up into bite-sized chunks, same with nature. There's some really great studies coming out about early morning sunlight exposure. So getting outdoors, preferably before the hours of 9 or 10 a.m., not wearing any sunglasses, and just that infrared light going into your eyeballs, into your retina, can help to boost serotonin levels. That's your happy hormone, can help regulate cortisol secretion, can help regulate your circadian rhythm. So maybe have some coffee or tea outside, maybe journal outside or go for a walk. And then you can look at if you have another, 10 or 15 minutes later in the day. So trying to get at least 20 minutes per day. But talking all about green spaces, but what about blue spaces? Oceans, rivers, lakes, streams, ponds, waterfalls. I will say that the research is not quite as robust for blue spaces, but that does not at all imply that it's not equally efficacious. Here's one particular study that looked at midlife well-being with regard to blue spaces. And what they found were children that spent more time around blue spaces tended to have better adult well-being scores. So this is probably associated with feeling safe, exploring curiosity, having positive associations when you're young, and then gravitating back to those blue spaces as you get older. So take home message here is if you have children, if you have nieces and nephews, grandchildren, friends and family, bring your little kids to blue spaces because it could help to improve and optimize their adult well-being scores. So what about if you have barriers to accessing nature, right? Maybe you don't live in a safe area. Maybe there's poor air quality. Maybe you have a disability. These are all potential barriers. And what can we do to still get some benefits of nature exposure? I love to share this photo. Most of you probably recognize this. This is Central Park. And a lot of times I'll have patients who live in big cities and they say, oh, I wish I lived next to a big park, or next to a forest. And Central Park, the origins of it, back in about 1850, when the island of Manhattan was getting developed, some very astute urban planners said, wow, all these people are going to be coming from vast farmland where there's lots of open space and moving to a city where we're going to be building concrete buildings everywhere. That might not be very good for our well-being. So they decided to create this haven for city dwellers that of course exists today. And it's just wonderful with hundreds of acres of green space and blue space. I know I love to visit Central Park when I go to New York City. So when I have people who live in big cities, I say, try to get outdoors, even tree-lined streets or just corner parks, or if you're in Boston, go to the Boston Gardens. So there can be access to nature even in big cities. And even some studies that have been looking at green space exposure and what can be done for that. And this is just a systematic review. And again, we can go to tree-lined streets, we can go to parks in the area, and they found that association with that green space exposure had a reduced risk of all-cause mortality and total cardiovascular disease and even strokes. So just being around trees is a good thing for us. And this is a really neat study that's going on in Louisville, and it involved planting trees. And what they found was that the people who lived in the area where the trees were planted, they did not change any other behaviors. They didn't start eating healthier, they didn't start exercising, they didn't start meditating. All that happened were trees were planted. And what they found in this central area where they were close proximity to these green spaces, there was about a 19% decrease in something called high sensitivity C-reactive protein levels. C-reactive protein levels are associated with inflammation in the body. So inflammation not just manifests as an achy joint, but inflammation that can manifest as cardiovascular disease, insulin resistance, obesity, autoimmune diseases. So being around trees is good for inflammation. So what about virtual reality nature? Could you just do virtual reality and just look at some nature, and could that help? And this is a really neat study. It was a crossover, and they recruited people to this study. They told them they were there for something else, but when they first got to the waiting room to do their task, they were in a room that was just surrounded by all white walls. And then they had to do a task. And then there was a washout where they probably went and maybe got some food or something, and they brought them back into a waiting room. But this time the waiting room was surrounded, all four walls, with just pictures of nature, virtual reality nature. And what they found was, after being in that waiting room with virtual reality nature, as opposed to the white wall waiting room, they had an increase in their heart rate variability. That's a good thing. And they also had various psychological gains, and they also felt more relaxed. So just being around virtual reality nature can be beneficial. What about listening to nature? So this is a study about 300 participants, and they listened to 6-minute sound bites. And they either listened to beautiful bird song, or they listened to loud, boisterous traffic sounds. So it might be horns, sirens, just loud traffic. And what they found was listening to bird song improved feelings of anxiety. And also listening to bird song improved feelings of paranoia. And then listening to traffic sounds actually worsened feelings of depression. So the take-home message here is, if you can't get outdoors, perhaps you could open a window and you could listen to some beautiful birdsong, or just put on some iTunes or YouTube and just be listening to nature sounds, because that could help to boost your mood. And what about looking at nature? So this was a study that looking at nature out through a window, and it was actually involved people who had just had their gallbladders out. So post-cholecystectomy, it's a fancy word. And it was 46 patients, and they all had private rooms with windows. Half of the patients had windows looking at beautiful landscape, treescape, flowers, courtyards. The other half had a window that faced basically a brick wall. What they found were the individuals who had windows facing some sort of nature. They had shorter stays. They had fewer negative comments from the nurse, and they required less pain medication. So I think this is really important when we're looking at healing spaces, to incorporate some sort of biophilic design. And this is also looking at gardening, and even being in urban gardens where you can share some space is a really good thing, where you can cultivate this gardening triad. And what this involves is, you feel good about caretaking, you have accomplished something, you've got a nature connection, you get to have a community benefit and increase our well-being. So getting a plot, sharing a plot of gardening can be a good thing, even if you live in a big city. So nature truly is nurture. So where does this come from? Nature is nurture. Well, biophilia. And maybe you've heard this term. It's starting to be trendy, biophilic design. But biophilia originated by Eric Fromm. But then most of us are familiar with biophilia by the prolific work of E.O. Wilson. And biophilia is described as the passionate love of life and all that is alive. It is the wish to further growth, whether in a person, plant, an idea, or social group. And basically, it's the innate emotional connection of human beings to all other living organisms. That's why I love this picture of just connecting. We as humans are nature. And I believe we know this as kids. Now, I grew up in the 70s, right? So as kids, we want to be outdoors. We want to dig for worms. We want to climb trees. We want to catch fireflies. We know this instinctively, that we're one with nature. And as we get older, we tend to get away from that with busy lives, with technology. But it's so important us to connect with all things living. And also, another important concept about why we feel so good when we get outdoors is the attention restoration theory. And this came out of the University of Michigan with Stephen and Rachel Kaplan. And it basically proposes that when we're away from everyday experiences, we experience these expansive spaces And nature has these very, curved edges and soft edges. We have this soft fascination. Whereas being in built environments, we have sharp angles. And so we have this indirect attention. And when we have this indirect attention, it tends to restore our cognitive abilities. And so when we do studies, and studies have been done, we find that after people have spent time in nature, they actually can perform better on cognition. And that has something to do with this attention restoration theory. So what is going on in these forest environments? Well, a lot of it has to do with something called phytoncides. Phyton means plant. You'll be hearing a lot about phytonutrients during the Plant Power Challenge. And side means sterilizing power, phytoncides. What are phytoncides? Well, phytoncides are organic volatile compounds that are released by anything living that's green. So trees and shrubs and plants. And the reason why they produce these phytoncides are to protect themselves from getting sick. The great thing is when we are around anything green, our trees, our plants, our shrubs, we actually inhale those phytoncides. And so it boosts our own immune systems as opposed to being around pollution that can not be so good for our respiratory systems. So coming back to Dr. King Lee, remember he was the original, the OG of Shinrin-yoku. He wanted to do a study on phytoncides. This was a very small study, just 12 subjects. Each subject had their own hotel room that they stayed in for 3 days. Half of the rooms were rigged to vaporize phytoncides. This was vaporizing stem oil from hinoki cypress trees. The other 6 rooms emitted O to nothing. After those 3 days, the participants came out. They had measured natural killer cell activity at baseline. And what they found were the individuals who had hotel rooms rigged with the phytoncides being emitted, they had a 20% increase in their natural killer cells. They also felt less fatigued, whereas the control group saw no changes. So, could we actually de-prescribe with nature? In lifestyle medicine, we talk about de-prescribing all the time. That's our goal, is to get people off medications or a decreased requirement from them. And we know that food can help and movement can help, but what about nature? And this is a study that found that people who had more frequent visits to green spaces, at least 3 to 4 times per week, had a decrease for medications related to mental health conditions, blood pressure, and asthma. So getting outdoors could actually help you to get off or decrease some of your medications. Now, make sure you're consulting with your primary care physician before you ever change any medication dosages. So what about the gut microbiome? You'll be hearing about this with Dr. Will Bulsiewicz as one of the Plant Power Challenge speakers. The gut microbiome, 38 trillion organisms living in mostly in our large intestine. So important because that's where 70% of our immune system resides and about 90% of our serotonin is produced. We know that food has a tremendous power to shift our gut microbiome. But what about nature? So this is a study looking at little kids, and they were enrolled in the Play and Grow program. And it was a 10-week program. And basically these kids were told, get outdoors, get dirty, play outside. After 10 weeks, they found that they had a more significant connection to nature. That makes sense. But also they had decreased perceived overall stress and anger. And they took fecal samples, poop samples, and they found that they had an increase in Roseburia, which is a good bacteria. And this type of bacteria produces something called butyrate, which is a short chain fatty acid. Short chain fatty acids are messengers that go all over our body to optimize our mood, optimize our wellness, and our health. And they also saw an increase in fecal serotonin level. Remember, I said that 90% of our serotonin is produced in the gut microbiome. So just by being outdoors, this suggests we can optimize our gut microbiome. So what about our brain? Does anything happen in our brain when we take a walk in nature? Well, this is a study looking at the amygdala. The amygdala is in your brain, and I like to refer to the amygdala as Amy G. Picture Amy G being up there in your brain with a pair of boxing gloves. And whenever there is a perceived threat, Amy G is ready to pounce on it. So if there's a tiger chasing you, you want that amygdala to be fired. However, we don't need to be in this fight or flight state all the time. We want Amy G to be able to relax, take off those boxing gloves, get us into a relaxation state. So this was a study looking at taking a 1 hour walk in nature versus a 1 hour walk in an urban environment. And what they found was after taking that 1 hour walk in nature, the amygdala was deactivated. We were able to get into a relaxation parasympathetic state. Amy G was able to take off those boxing gloves. So, what about chronic diseases? As a lifestyle medicine physician, I am all about trying to prevent, treating, and possibly reversing chronic diseases such as type 2 diabetes. And this study showed that being closer to green spaces could actually lower the risk of type 2 diabetes and also lower the risk of cardiovascular disease associated with type 2 diabetes. And also, green spaces could also lower the risk of hospitalizations related to neurodegenerative diseases. So getting out to green spaces and blue spaces could lower the risk of hospitalization to Alzheimer's and Parkinson's. And also, being around green spaces could lower the risk of strokes. So these are all great reasons to be around green spaces. And when we talk about longevity, we talk about extending our health span and our well span. Telomeres, these are the ends of our chromosomes. We want to be always looking at telomere length because as we get older, our telomeres shorten. Now we're looking at increasing our biological age. Now, chronological age is how old you are. 55 today. I like to think that my biological age is lower than that. And this is a study looking at telomere length in green spaces. And being around green spaces could potentially lengthen our telomeres, so help to lower our biological aging process. So what about movement in nature? Now, this is a double win, moving our bodies in nature, and it can help to lower our blood pressure and stress hormone levels, reduce our nervous system arousal, enhance our immune function, helps us feel better about ourselves, and reduce anxiety. And there are so many ways we can move our body outdoors. Find one that suits you, that you like to do. Find others to do it with you. You can go walking or jogging, gardening, hiking, biking, swimming, skiing, bird watching, practicing yoga or Tai Chi outdoors, kayaking, canoeing, fishing. And here's some ways that Dr. Outdoors likes to preach what she practices. So I love to go skiing. I find that I surround myself by people who like to move their body outdoors, and that helps me have fun and helps to keep me accountable. So my kids, they live out in Denver. They're in their 20s. We love to go hiking together. I have a group of girlfriends that I love to go out running. I roped my husband into doing some of the running stuff. So these are just ways that I like to keep active. There's a picture also of a friend and one of my patients who started moving her body in nature, and her why was to be healthy and have enough vitality to play with her grandson, but she's doing a great job at that. And the blue zones. You'll be hearing about the blue zones with Dr. Don Masalem. And the blue zones, these are areas in the world where people live the longest, the highest percentage of centenarians, people living to 100. And they have 9 power pillars. And one of them is to move naturally. So you don't have to belong to a Purple Planet Fitness. You just want to be active throughout the course of the day and preferably outdoors if you can. So gardening is such a wonderful way to get benefits. And there's so many benefits from gardening. It is an immune system booster, just being outdoors around all that greenery. It's also a stress reducer. As you're cultivating and watching the flourishing of your plants, that can be a meditative, almost a mindful practice. It's a good workout. I know when I am mowing my lawn, spreading mulch and doing some weeding, I am getting a good workout. And also digging in that soil, exposing yourself to microbes in the soil can help to boost your gut microbiome. And anything you grow in this garden, you're going to be eating the rainbow, which is going to be good for you. This is a technique that I love to share with all of my patients and anyone who wants to learn from me. And this is a technique and a practice that you can do whether you're 2 years old or whether you're 92 years old. And it's practicing mindfulness outdoors. And it's utilizing all five of your senses. So, how you do this is you step outside and you first want to focus on five things you can see. Like, really look around. So many times we're just in our head and we're not even paying attention to where we are, being in the present moment. So, what are you seeing? Are you seeing flowers in bloom? Are you looking at cloud formations? Are you looking at leaves in the ground? Then switch to four things you can feel and touch and actually touch them. So maybe you feel the soft moss on a rock, or maybe you pick up a fern leaf and feel those rough edges. Then shift to three things you can hear. Really perk up those ears. Are you hearing different kind of bird song? Are you hearing the wind rustling the leaves? And then shift to two things you can smell. What are you smelling? Maybe there's been a fresh rain, and that smell is actually called petrichor. Or maybe you smell some beautiful flowers in bloom. And then I say maybe one thing you can taste, but don't do anything you don't trust that you know what it is. So this is a mindfulness technique utilizing all five senses in nature. So, how do we go about prescribing nature? And I hope that you have a clinician that's already talking to you about this. And if not, maybe you can ask them about it. So, we do have a wonderful nature prescribing resource called Park RX. And this is what it looks like. I actually have a prescription pad and I can log on to their resource and I can find out where you live and what kind of parks or access to nature might be close to you. And I'm going to write this just like a prescription. I'm going to tell you how often to do it. I'm going to tell you how long you should be doing it, the duration, and then you'll get reminders by text or email. So this is really exciting to see nature prescribing in action. They're also doing this in Canada. This is Parks, and this was Dr. Melissa Lem. I say there's two Dr. Outdoors named Melissa. Go figure. And this is nature prescribing that they instituted a couple of years ago. And when the clinician prescribes nature, if you're in Canada, you actually get free access to over 80 parks in Canada, which is amazing. We don't quite have that here in the US yet, but we do have a Parks Pass. So if you are age 62 or above, you pay $80 just one time. And for the rest of your life, you can access any of our national parks for free. Now, keep in mind, if you have a fourth grader, either a child, a niece or nephew of a grandchild, that during their fourth grade year, they can get free access to any of our national parks. So we've heard of food pyramids, but I love this nature connection pyramid. And at the bottom, these are things we're going to be wanting to do every day. Get outdoors, right? Try to get that 20 minutes. And then maybe a couple times a week, maybe work in your garden, maybe go bird watching, do some nature walks. And then monthly, try to support your local parks. Go to your metro parks, go to your state parks. The reasons why these parks close is because we don't visit them enough. So support those local parks. And then yearly, if you're able to take a vacation, maybe consider centering that around a nature experience. Maybe not centering it, but involving a nature experience. So these are some ways to incorporate nature into your everyday life. So some resources I'm going to share with you. I have no affiliation with any of them, but I think they're great resources. This is an app called Nature Dose, and this is something you can download for free on your iPhone or your Android. This helps keep track of how much time you're spending outdoors with the goal of getting at least 120 minutes per week. So that's a really fun one. Also, this is about business, but it's written by a friend of mine, Bart Foster, and his whole mission in life is to get C-suite, so leadership out of the boardrooms, out of their three-piece suits, out into nature. And what he's found is having big meetings, they actually outdoors hiking, they actually have more productivity, more creativity. So if you have maybe some team meetings with your colleagues, maybe take those outdoors once in a while because I think it could benefit your productivity. And this is a publication that I'm very proud of. I co-wrote this with my leadership team of the Nature is Medicine committee from ACLM, and this is available online, and it goes through everything I've been talking about today. And then some other resources that I absolutely adore. If we want to learn more about blue spaces, this is a wonderful book called Blue Mind, Wallace J. Nichols. Also, some nature, more green spaces, but also blue spaces, is The Nature Fix by Florence William, and then the books by Richard Louv. So these are wonderful, wonderful resources that I guarantee you'll learn a lot. And then this is my proud baby that came out recently, Dr. Outdoors Guide to Nature and Lifestyle Medicines. I invite you to check this out as well. And if you're into podcasts, I know I love podcasts. It's just such a great way to learn for free. There is the Nature of Wellness podcast with Dr. Mark Campbell. I think he's on his third season now. I was a guest on his first season, but just wonderful people coming in talking about all of the health and well-being benefits of nature. So I always love to end with a couple of quotes, and we're going to bring this back to Hippocrates, the father of medicine, also a doctor outdoors. And I love this quote. If you're in a bad mood, go for a walk. If you're still in a bad mood, go for another walk. And I say, preferably outdoors. So thank you. Thank you for being here today. Thank you for being part of the Plant Powered Challenge. And I look forward to engaging with you, and hopefully you'll think about going outdoors each and every day.
Thank you so much, Dr. Sunderman. Yeah. So I just want to thank everyone for the opportunity to join our webinar today. I just have a quick couple comments regarding the challenge. Your family and friends can still sign up. It's open to everyone and is free. For any content that may have been missed, they will receive that in the confirmation email for the challenge. And with all of our webinars, you can find the session recordings in your Monday weekly emails. If you haven't checked out our cooking demo yet, would highly encourage to do that. It's a great way to get inspired in the kitchen. And also just a reminder on the weekly challenge. So make sure to stay consistent with your health efforts and try out all of the delicious recipes that are in our Monday email. But again, Dr. Sunderman, thank you so much. It's so great to see how nature can impact all pillars of lifestyle medicine and how we can take that step one in getting started. But thank you so much, everyone, for joining today, and we'll plan on seeing you next time.
Thank you.
Thank you.